at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for the Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
COVID could make this the deadliest year ever. I'm Carmen Roberts, Fox News.
Those who are not vaccinated are causing hospitals to become overrun again.
President Biden making that assessment just hours before the CDC announced that 2021 is shaping up to be the deadliest year in U.S. history, in large part due to the coronavirus. Agency officials believe deaths this year will surpass 2020 by 15,000, making it the worst. And that's saying a lot because a CDC report released within the last hour shows 2020 was actually worse than first reported, with an overall total near 3.4 million. COVID's the third leading cause of U.S. deaths, behind heart disease and cancer. COVID's killed more than 380,000 people in the U.S. this year, and President Biden is urging Americans to do their patriotic duty and get vaccinated.
Biden's only warning is to the unvaccinated, and he's reconsidering his travel ban. As voluntary shutdowns and cancellations hit sports teams, Broadway, restaurants, and some schools, the president insists this isn't March of 2020. Still, the White House is certainly preparing like it's March of 2020, sending 1,000 military medical personnel to overwhelmed hospitals, FEMA surge teams to 6 states, pre-positioning supplies like ventilators across the country, and for the first time, sending home rapid tests to anyone who wants one, something the White House appeared to discount only 2 weeks ago.
Fox's Jackie Heinrich. The Secret Service says people have stolen nearly $100 billion from COVID-19 relief programs that were set up to help businesses and people who lost their jobs during the pandemic. And stocks snap a losing streak, the Dow advancing 560 points, the NASDAQ rallying 360. America's listening to Fox News.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
An easily overlooked part of covering our home is what's inside of it. Over time, we buy things we don't want to lose, but don't update our contents coverage. The smart thing to do is get the answers and level up our insurance to make sure we're totally protected.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
A House Republican says he won't cooperate with the congressional panel investigating the January 6th Capitol riot.
Pennsylvania Republican Scott Perry says he will decline a request from the House Select Committee, arguing the panel is illegitimate and not duly constituted. Perry is an ally of former President Trump. The committee this week released a letter asking the congressman to voluntarily cooperate by providing documents and testimony about attempts to oust the former acting attorney general. There has not yet been a response from the committee or an indication if the panel will subpoena Perry. At the White House, Jared Halpern, Fox News.
A Boston jury convicts Harvard University professor Dr. Charles Lieber of charges he concealed his ties to a Chinese-run recruitment program. Lieber had pleaded not guilty to charges including filing false tax returns and failing to report a foreign bank account in China. Fox News Digital learns migrants who've crossed illegally into the U.S. are using Ubers to get to their next destinations, typically hotels.
Fox News spoke to 2 Uber drivers in Yuma. One driver said he's had riders confirm they're here illegally. The other driver said he deduced some passengers are illegal based on circumstances such as getting picked up with bags in remote locations near the border. Here is one of those drivers.
We'll get a notification of a pickup, head down to the location, and there will be a group of 20-plus immigrants standing on the corner waiting for Ubers, and they'll just hop in and go wherever they're going.
Fox News reached out to Uber. The rideshare company did not respond to direct questions.
Fox's Matt Finn. And Jeopardy invites Steve Martin to appear on the game show after the audience notices how much recent champion Sam Buttrey looks like the comedy legend. I'm Carmen Roberts, and this is Fox News.
Santa's come in and things are looking up. Bank Pacific has rolled out Rudolph's favorite My Christmas loan with an annual percentage interest rate as low as 3.99% and up to $50,000. And with the new Bank Pacific contactless Visa debit card, you can have the flexibility of using your money when you want to, where you want to. My Christmas loan contactless Visa debit card. Let's make Christmas merrier this year. Equal opportunity lender. Credit conditions apply. Merry Christmas from Bank Pacific.
Howdy, Chili's is serving y'all some Texas-sized family meal, because everything's bigger in Texas. Enjoy full racks of Chili's world-famous baby back ribs, margarita chicken, savory shrimp, beef fajita, smoked jalapeno sausages, mashed potatoes, and corn on the cob. Man, this meal's bigger than Bill's, but it ain't breaking the bank. Chili's has Texas-sized family meals for just $45 to feed your crew of 3 to 6 folks. For your youngins, just add $5 for a kid's meal. Chili's. More life and bigger meals happen here.
As we celebrate this holiday season, we reflect on the hardships of the past 2 years and remain grateful for the family and friends who share our journey and lighten our burdens. The team at Security Title is proud of the work we do to support ourselves and our families, to serve and care for our customers, and to give back to our community. May this season of joy and the new year bring happiness, good health, and prosperity to you and yours. Merry Christmas from all of us at Security Title.
Guam Auto Spot has the best selection in Buick, GMC, Mitsubishi, and used cars like the 2021 Mitsubishi Mirage starting at $127 per paycheck. 0 down. Call 671-478-AUTO to take a test drive or get pre-approved online at GuamAutospot.com.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Well, you know, when it comes to Second Amendment and constitutional rights, I don't care who it is or what it is, I will not be silenced. And apparently the governor shares my view when it comes to guns, because I'm looking at a story that ran on PNC today. Governor vetoes gun suppressor and silencer bill. So I guess we're talking about two different pieces of gear, a gun suppressor and a silencer. Now, I wonder what a gun suppressor is. That sounds like a Democrat. Governor Leon Guerrero has vetoed the controversial Bill 73, the Hearing Protection Act of 2021, which seeks to remove existing restrictions on the ownership of suppressors and silencers in Guam law. Now, I've been following this a little bit on the Ray Gibson show, and I know better than to refer to those appliances that fasten to the end of the barrel of a pistol. I know better than to refer to those as silencers, because they're not silencers. They don't silence anything. That's the job of the left.
Reality narrative.
What they do is suppress the noise. And, you know, back in the day, if you were going to go to the rifle range, you just went to the rifle range and you banged away for a few days. And it no doubt had a detrimental effect on the hearing of shooters, of the shooters. Nowadays, you go to the rifle range, you stick those little rubber earplugs in your ears. I know some shooters do that, and then they have things that look like large earmuffs. And it's all really important because you expose your ears to too much noise, you're going to have a hearing loss. The joke is that cannon cockers, that is artillerymen, can always be spotted in a crowd because there'll be the guys that are giving it, huh? What?
Because cone ears.
Yeah, because they're ear trumpets.
It sounds weird.
Yeah, because they're around so much loud noise. I have an aversion to noise myself, not medical. I think probably just the product of being a crotchety old man. But, it seems like about 3/4 of the trucks on our island don't have mufflers. And I can understand it because if a truck doesn't have a muffler, better fuel economy, better, you're going to make a little more money. A muffler costs money. Mufflers wear out. They have to be replaced. So I'm constantly exposed to these extremely loud trucks roaring down our highway. And if there were some way that I could wave a magic wand and put silencers on them, I'd certainly do it. Young folks, I think, do more damage to their ears than what they realize with their music.
Especially now that we put the headphones directly into the ear now.
Yeah, what are those things called?
The earbuds.
Yeah. I'm too vain to wear something like that. The geekiness, the dorkiness factor would prevent me from wearing something like that. But I see a lot of people wearing them, and I wear a headset myself when I go out walking, not because there's so much good things on the air. Of course, we got Ray Show, and I listen to that. I don't want to miss anything, and I have to remind myself, turn the volume down. All you got to do is just hear it. It doesn't have to be any louder than that. So, I think that probably there's a lot of hearing loss caused by loud noises. And I think anything that we could do to help people avoid those loud noises would be good, including the blast from the barrel of a pistol, because that is really loud. I'm not sure of the numbers, but I think it's up around 170 decibels. And the measure called decibel is deceptive because something that is 101 decibels is like twice as loud as something that's 100 decibels. It's not a proportional scale. So 170 decibels is a really loud noise, and it could do a lot of damage to your ears.
Hence the term silencer is a misnomer.
Exactly.
There's nothing silent about a suppressor.
Yeah. They probably take it down to 110 or so decibels, which is still pretty loud. So I'm with the gunners on this. Anything that would help to prevent hearing loss, I think, is a good thing. I was talking to a couple of guys, a couple of well-known gunners here on the island the other day, and trying to explain that to them, but I kind of wasted my time because they couldn't hear me.
Yeah. They probably didn't hear that either.
Yeah, right. Yeah, our commercial, if you laugh every time you hear the horn honk. Yeah, people that don't laugh might just be people that might be gun aficionados, right? They probably like the show. It's just that they can't hear the horn beeping, right? And then the downside. Well, what grave hazard do we encounter if we allow people who shoot guns to put a suppressor on their guns? My answer to that is absolutely none. Because people go to shooting ranges, to pistol ranges to fire their guns. They aren't out shooting them downtown or someplace like that. So in the confines of a pistol range, even if all of the horror stories that the Democrats want to spin are half true, it doesn't make any difference. If you put a silencer on the gun, you won't hear it, and you won't know enough to take cover, right? You won't be warned. Yeah, like we all live, like up where I live, up in Jigo, we're actually thinking of seeding several blocks of Jigo to Chicago because the crime rate is so high up there. There's so many shootings and so much gunplay. No, not
Doesn't
really.
work that way.
No. Except for New Year's Eve, I've never heard anyone fire a gun on this island anywhere. And we're even getting the New Year's Eve thing under control. It's much better now than it was, say, 30 years ago. So boo, Governor Leon Guerrero, boo, bad move. And I hope that all of the pro-gun folks, the Second Amendment folks, remember this come election time. I will. I would anyhow. All right, so much for Second Amendment. Let's head for Zemi Ikotny. It's one of those days when I got to borrow your papers, Jose. Give Jose a second to bring in the hard copies of the papers here. I read them when I was ready to go. I printed them out. I just forgot to bring them along. Yeah, thank you, sir. Yeah. Practice Wuhan virus safety protocols to help prevent spread over the holidays. I probably would have been just as well to leave this at home because it's not saying anything. We want everyone to consider your gatherings. The patterns that we're seeing here with these cases are that it's happening in social gatherings. We want to urge you to make sure that if you're going to be gathering this weekend, please do it safe. What garbage.
See, if suppressors were legal, we wouldn't be able to hear them cry wolf.
Yeah. Okay. And then the Daily News, no better. Omicron is spreading fast in the nation. Proper mask wearing will help protect us. I'm not going to waste any time on this either. I'll just share a few things that I ran across on the internet. One was from a purported expert who said that unless the holes in your mask are smaller than 100 micro something or others, all these masks are is facial decorations.
Placebos.
Yeah. Well, I don't think they even rise to the level of placebo because I don't think anybody thinks they do any good, right? People wear the mask because you got to wear them, and that's it. Or they wear the masks because everybody else is doing it, and I want to be like everybody else. But from what I've read, they do absolutely no good at all. And from what I've heard, what I've read about Omicron, and you know, the internet is full of stuff like this, and I suppose there's always the risk of picking up things on the internet that really aren't reliable, but the risk of picking up something from government officials that aren't reliable is probably greater. But from what I've read, Omicron, although it's a little bit more contagious than the original Wuhan virus and the Delta virus, is not anywhere as deadly. And those who are talking like they know what they're talking about will tell you that a virus, as it evolves, will become less and less deadly. And a virus is technically a living thing. Like all living things, one of the foundations or one of the fundamental motivators of a living thing is self-preservation, to continue the species. So if a virus is too deadly, it's going to kill off all the hosts and it's going to die. So a virus, as it evolves, becomes less deadly, leaving more hosts to be infected and more contagious. It spread itself around a little bit more. And what I read, that's exactly what's happening in South Africa. and maybe happening in the United States. But when we see stuff like this on the front page of the paper, governor on Omicron, quote, board up like a super typhoon is coming. Wow. Board up like a super typhoon is coming. Yeah, and the sky is falling, and because of global warming, Nimitz Hill is going to be underwater next Christmas. There's just no end to this fear-mongering.
There's a 50% chance of the island tipping over.
Yeah. Hank Johnson told us about that about 10 years ago, so it's about on schedule that it would happen. Yeah, so all this fear-mongering, what some people call fear porn, wearing a little bit thin, and my suspicious nature tells me or causes me to analyze and come up with the idea that our governor is doing this because as long as she can keep up this rap, it is a reason for her to exercise all her magic powers. You know, it's executive order after executive order, on and on and on. We're in an emergency now that's lasted. You know, kids that were born in March of 2020, you know, will probably have their won't be able to get their driver's license because of the quarantine, you know, because of the executive orders in place. So it's time that we stopped all of this fear mongering, take a realistic look at where we are, and learn to live with the Wuhan virus. We've done a horrible job so far. We've ruined our economy. We've put people out of work. We've traumatized an awful lot of people economically and socially. We've shortchanged the kids on their education. Kids need to go to school. The last thing a kid needs to be doing is sitting around looking at a screen. They do that pretty well without any adult prompting to do it. So we've just gotten so carried away, and we means the governor has gotten so carried away with her magic powers, the 19th floor, all of the sole source procurement, and on and on and on and on. It's time to call a halt to it. Ordinarily, you would think, well, we have a three-branch government. The courts have done workmanlike job on their end of it. The legislature is populated by folks who are striking, as that word is used in the Navy, striking for the rate of Rip Van Winkle. That's where we are there. So it's time to get real and to stop this. And the newspapers are unfortunately aiders and abettors with editorials like they keep running, front page stories, prepare for this like you're preparing for a super typhoon. It just doesn't make any sense anymore. Okay, let me talk to another Joe here and find out what another Joe thinks about the situation we're in. Good afternoon, another Joe.
Hey, Bob. So I think it's going to be time where people are a little bit less afraid to meet each other in public. We should have some sort of a town hall or some sort of forum like Democrats, you know, have been having, whatever their standard is for having it. And we have both sides of this issue. We have a dialogue and say, you know, present the evidence, the data, the science that supports whatever they think the policy should be. So there's no surprises. And, you know, it'll be very, very informative for the public. And the people can decide who they want to support because, you know, elections are coming really soon. And then it'll be a fact-finding, fact-gathering forum and say, okay, this is what was presented. These are the so-called experts. There's someone just earlier today, I won't say which program they were on, someone named Dr. Annette David or David, whatever. And she surprised me saying that, hey, newborns to 4-year-olds, maybe we should start vaccinating them. And it just caught me off guard there because you mean like mandating or you mean like optional for parents? Because the way that the Democrats are going is like they want to mandate everyone because something like it's a hole in the wall if we don't vaccinate everyone 100% or whatever it is their rationale is. So maybe these public leaders, officials should have some forums and bring these issues up and see what the people think, and bring forth the experts and the evidence. What do you think, Bob?
Well, as Jose points out on Facebook, what you are talking about is exactly what Bill 11 would do if the senators would override that.
And binding.
Veto. Yeah. So that the governor would have to come and make her case. This is what's going on. This is what I've done. This is why I did it. This is what I'm going to do, and this is why I'm going to do it. And they could hold public hearings. They could have roundtables and all that stuff, instead of running the government by diktat, D-I-K-T-A-T, diktat. And I don't have to define that word for you. You can pretty much figure out what it means with the example that I gave. So what we need is we perhaps need, there's a lot of organ transplants that are possible now. You can, if your kidneys are shot, you can get a kidney transplant. I knew a guy back in my hometown that got a heart transplant, and he lived 25 years with somebody else's heart. It was amazing. Yeah.
That's a long time for a transplant.
Absolutely. So, I've been thinking maybe we need to subject our Republican minority at the legislature to an intestine transplant. What do you think, Jose?
Fortitude.
Yeah, because maybe the new intestines would have some intestinal fortitude, and remembering that the everyday word for intestine is what, Jose?
Guts.
Guts, exactly.
Can I make one last point about?
Yeah.
I don't understand why it has to be one or the other. Why couldn't they do the resolution and the Bill 11 at the same time? I don't understand they're afraid that they would lose votes in the process. They're afraid that they would disprove their side, their perspective. That if it's based on data and science, how's the data and science going to change? And is it the court of public opinion? It's going to be objective. I don't understand why they couldn't do both.
Well, here's the reason, Joe. You've probably, they're not as prevalent now as they used to be, but there used to be, in public buildings, you'd see fire alarms. And a fire alarm has a handle. You pull the handle and it goes, right? Fire alarms. And fire alarms oftentimes had a glass door across the front. And there would be a little sign underneath it that said, in case of emergency, break glass, right? That's the Bob and Ray resolution. It is in case of emergency, break glass. When you can't get Bill 11 through, break the glass, pull the handle, and pass the Bob and Ray resolution.
Yeah. Okay, Bob, I just keep listening. Thanks for your time.
Okay, Joe. Thanks for calling. Yeah, Joe. Good argument for Bill 11.
That's what we need. People who say we want public
input,
and that's Bill 11.
Yeah, and that's another Joe who has his share of public input every day, doesn't he? Okay, let's take a look at the card. And I have to tip my hat to Paul Zerzan and systemic racism. I got to stand up here for a second. Systemic racism goes back to Paul Zerzan telling everyone that in a letter to the editor that what we've been calling red rice is really orange. The Daily News came back with a counterattack, a kind of a Greta, how dare you type attack. How dare this outsider come in here and speak against our tradition? So the way it works is this, that red rice is orange. So take a look at this sign here. Okay, you see number one, it's orange. That's the narrative. Red rice is orange, right? And then number two, you see the color red. So when you look at number two, that's red rice. because the narrative says that it's red. The fact that the letters are orange means absolutely nothing at all. And I'm so taken with what Paul pointed out that I see this as an allegorical presentation of what we're doing here all over the country, where we have the facts, the truth, what's really going on, and then we have the narrative presented usually by the left, which is, requires a deliberate suspension of disbelief to adhere to it, because it's contrafactual, contra-truth. It's opposite of the facts and the truth. Things like, someone who's born with male plumbing, if they really want to, can become a woman. That's not true. But, what I just said is labeled as hate speech. And if I wanted to speak at probably any Ivy League university and say that I couldn't, I would be run off the campus, because what I said is not true. Not true, meaning it doesn't fit into the narrative.
Doesn't toe the line.
Yeah, so that's what's going on. So that's why I keep coming back to Paul Zerzan, orange, red, etc. So right now, what color is the shirt I'm wearing? Well, I wore a red shirt today, and on Monday I wore a red shirt too. The fact that a couple of people said, Bob, where'd you get that orange shirt? It has nothing to do with the narrative, right?
And they were completely wrong.
Absolutely. Okay, let's take a short break here. We'll come back to the card.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point. Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
Portions of the program brought to you by Nissan. Choose your favorite Nissan, and there's an abundance of Nissan automobiles to choose from. Rogues, Rogue Sports, Muranos, Kicks, Sentras, Leafs, Rogues, and then start talking about the deal they want to put together for you. Enjoy 0% APR, or your first 3 payments are on them. Just sign and drive away. Inventory limited, so don't wait. See Nissan Guam first. Wait, there's the fine print. I've got to read the thing in fine print ease. On approved credit, 3 payments calculated, 5% APR, 60 months term, and based on the actual selling price of the vehicle only, not including down payment or any aftermarket products or accessories. See Nissan Guam for full details.
We now return to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, soaring over the confusion with his superpowers of truth. Call 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Yeah, so here we are, the card. First item on the card, Paul Zerzan versus systemic racism, which I just discussed. The second is Crescinda Uggan versus nepotism. And then we've got Wayne Pacell versus Gods and Arrows, Tall Tales versus Separatists, Jerry Kitchen versus the Gov Guam Retirement Fund, Bavakwa, Michael Bavakwa versus the USMC. Guess which side I'm on. And then the left versus the Constitution. Again, guess which side I'm on. All right, so we start out here with Crescinda Uggan. Actually, it's Crescinda Uggan and Governor Leon Guerrero versus the merit system. And bringing you up to date here, starting out with yesterday's card. There was an item on yesterday's card about Crescenda Uggan being given an above-step recruitment when she was detailed, as you were, she had been the deputy director of DYA, and now she's assigned to the Department of Public Health and Social Services in a permanent classified position. In order to be hired into a classified position, this is how it works. You have to file an application. First of all, there has to be a vacancy. You file an application. You can file an application which will be kept on file even if there is no vacancy. You file an application. Somebody, if we're talking general government, somebody at the Department of Administration reviews that application, sees if you are in fact qualified for the position. They don't do this at the port. They hire them first and then determine whether or not they're qualified. And if you are qualified, then your name is kind of tossed into the hat. You'll be interviewed, and the interviews are broken down into groups of 5. You and everybody else who made the cut will be interviewed. The gnomes of the Department of Administration then will rank the applicants into the top 5. And the director of that agency can choose any one of the 5 from the top 5. It doesn't have to be number 1, it can be number 5. But he has to choose someone from that 5 that made it through the gauntlet of the application process. That's the way it works. Crescenda Uggan went from Deputy Director of Youth Affairs straight to the Department of Public Health and Social Services into a job, let's see, I can't find the job, but it has something to do with children, a children's bureau in the Department of Public Health and Social Services. So it's unusual when someone goes from the unclassified service to the classified service. Now, the advantages, of course, are the classified service. When the administration changes, you keep your job. So the game, the political game over the years has always been when a governor gets near the end of their term, they try to plant as many of their loyal special assistants in classified positions as they can. So Governor Leon Guerrero is a little bit ahead of the game here, unless she figures she's going to lose. But that's the way the game has been played over the years. Now, there's an interesting addition to the Crescenda Uggan move from unclassified to classified. And this is what the article in KUAM says. Uggan is the sister of Adelup Chief of Staff John Jr. Calvo, the daughter of Civil Service Commission Chair Juan Calvo, and the wife of acting DPHSS, in other words, Public Health Human Resources Head, Tony Uggan. Tony Uggan is the HR administrator for the hospital, but an oversight hearing of the hospital revealed he had recently been detailed to public health, maybe to make it easier on his wife. We don't know, right? The only one who's raised hell about this is Senator Brown, as usual. You know, oh, she's related to all those people? What an interesting coincidence. Yeah.
Well, at least we know what the first criteria is.
Yeah. Yeah, the gnomes of DOA, Department of Administration, first of all, see if the applicant is related to someone in a high position. And if not, then the application is rejected, right? Now, Crystal Paco really kind of fluffed it up for us. Adelup Communications Director Crystal Paco San Augustine went to bat for Uggan in a WhatsApp message saying Uggan has, quote, expressed her intent to continue public service to our island's youth in a different capacity.
So she's volunteering.
Yeah, I'm so impressed. Continue public service. She has applied as the Human Services Administrator for Public Health as part of the newly established Division of Children's Wellness. Wow. Her intent to continue public service.
Does this include children in the womb?
No, because they don't have any rights unless they can make it out of their own womb, right? Especially in this administration. I suppose any application in public health has to go past the director of the Bureau of Women's Affairs to make sure to make sure that they're up to speed on the agenda, right? On the narrative. Okay, so that's the game there. As far as I can tell, Crescinda Uggan is not related to my wife's family. She somehow missed that one. But she's related to just about everybody else in town.
She could have had a job with you, Bob.
Yeah, I would have had, you wouldn't have a job, Jose.
Not at all.
Yeah, because we're not
She's
related.
more qualified.
Yeah. Okay. Now, a story came out today, $1.5 billion funding for Guam in peril. Governor defends official $71K pay. So this is two totally different stories under the same cover. I'm not going to go into the first story. The second part of the story goes like this. This is a story that ran in the Post, and it goes like this. The governor also told reporters she's in support of the nearly $71,000 salary for the above-step recruitment for Crescinda Uggan, who's expected to move from the Department of Youth Affairs to the Department of Public Services. Now, this is something, if you know what you're doing, jumps out and grabs you by the eyeballs unless you're a reporter for the Post. This is a direct quote from the governor. Now, I know that there's big criticism about Crescinda Uggan, and I have to defend my decision to appoint Crescinda in that job. My decision.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's a slip.
Wow. Well, we've gotten on the governor before for not being transparent. This time, her transparency is quite apparent. So she's talking to a reporter from the Post, and she says, we're corrupt, but at least we tell you about our corruption.
So now she appoints classified positions.
Yeah, she appoints someone to a classified position who had been unclassified, which means had been appointed by her. Yeah. But she's well connected. Crescinda's well protected. I have to defend my decision to appoint Crescinda in that job. Crescinda is going to be the administrator of the Division of Children's Wellness Program at Public Health. The governor said there's no abnormal, irregular, illegal things that are happening. No way. With respect to the above step recruitment. Yeah, the appointment itself, of course, is as crooked as a snake, but not the above step recruitment. If we're going to hire somebody, if we're going to go outside the merit system to hire somebody, don't quibble about an above-step recruitment. That's the message here. She noted that the practice is done to provide competent workers to service the public and retain qualified employees. If you read her resume, she's very competent. She has a bachelor's degree in child care, and she's worked with children. Wow. The governor said, taking issue with the criticism of Uggan's salary, how do we entice our local people to serve the public if we cannot give them the competency value of their work? And if it means giving them above step, then give them above step. That's the most logical way to address it.
That's actually what I would tell her. How do you expect people
to
feel confident about applying for a position
when the governor just does it all by herself? Yeah. Crescenda Uggan presented herself to the governor, got out a deck of cards, pulled out the red queen, not the queen of hearts, the queen of diamonds, and said, "Governor, I carry this with me every day. Can I have the job? I'm very loyal to you." Yeah, so a tremendous failure here. And then I didn't make a note of who the reporter is. Maybe you can tell me who the reporter is. Jose, no, I still have the hard copy.
Yeah.
I didn't give it back. Let me check here and see who the reporter is. Oh, I'm sorry. It's not in the paper. It's
Could have been a press release, Bob.
Well, no, it didn't run on PNC, so it couldn't be a press release. Let me see here. Yeah. Heidi, I'm surprised.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
She's usually very good about catching those.
Yes, she is. Yeah, because a heads-up reporter would have said, "Governor, what are you doing appointing people to the classified service?" It's kind of like when the announcement, I don't remember who the reporter was, but the announcement was made that several raises were given at by the CCU in executive session, and it just ran like, until I caught it. So, yeah, this is just amazing. Now, you always have to apply this test when you see something like this. When you see the governor do something this outlandish, possibility number one, she doesn't know what she's doing. Possibility number two, she does know what she's doing. Possibility number two is far more onerous than possibility number one, because you could look at this and say, what she's telling us here is, shut up. I'm the governor. I'm going to run it the way I want to. The spoils system is made known to us by Andrew Jackson, is alive and well in the government of Guam. If you want to work for the government of Guam, you better get in line with the spoil system.
The in crowd.
If you better make sure that you are in. And also, if you are in, that you want to stay in. So this was a really fantastic item in today's news that even Heidi missed.
I don't think anybody else has picked that up, Bob. You're the first person I've heard say that.
Yeah, well, that's why tailgaters cling to this program.
You're the first to know.
Yeah. Okay, next on the card, I've got the Supreme Court versus notwithstanding any other law. And after a case that started back in 2008 is finally over. It was up and down the Superior Court, Supreme Court, etc., collateral issues, and it's finally over. And the Supreme Court has held that no more gambling machines in the game rooms. And the reason is that when the Department of Revenue and Taxation sent proposed rules to the legislature, they didn't comply with the law. They didn't send the economic impact statement, a couple of others. They didn't hold public hearings, on and on and on. And once again, there's a nugget in here that most people won't catch, and that is that we've all seen the phrase, notwithstanding any other law. It's the number one draftsman's tool over at the legislature. And the Supreme Court, in this case, and this now is the law here on Guam, that the phrase notwithstanding any other law means only any other law that conflicts with the target law. If it's a law that operates in the same area and deals with the same subject, and it doesn't conflict with the target law, it stays on the books. Thus, the Supreme Court found that our administrative adjudication law was not in conflict with the mechanism prescribed in the law that allowed public health, Rev Tax to promulgate regulations. Therefore, because Rev Tax didn't comply with the administrative adjudication law, the regs are void. So that is a really significant change, and perhaps will cause a lot of lawyers to get out their magnifying glasses and go back and look at some of the older, some of the statutes that are on the books with the light of challenging them on that basis. The second important thing about this is that there's some huge money involved in these gambling machines and in these game rooms, etc. And once the matter is disposed of by the Supreme Court, it's possible to file a motion with the Supreme Court to reconsider. I suppose if you live to be 120, you might see that happen once in a while. I will never live to see the day that happens. It's really, really hard to come by. It has happened. I remember a couple of times it did happen, but it's very hard to come by. Since this case did not arise under the Constitution or laws of the United States, I don't see any possible appeal from the Supreme Court of Guam to the United States Supreme Court. So that would mean that judicially, as far as my analysis is concerned, judicially, it's over. Shifting the focus, guess where? To the legislature. So you can bet that there will be phone calls and WhatsApps, et cetera, probably as soon as, today, when that decision is made known, talking to senators, draft legislation suggested, et cetera, a legislative remedy to this horrible mistake that the Supreme Court has done, and taking away our freedom by saying no gambling on the island of Guam.
It's cultural.
Yeah, and besides that, it's cultural. Yeah, okay, let's take a short break and I'll come back to the Supreme Court.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
The holidays are here and you know what that means. Time to gather with family and friends, dress up our homes, and explore Christmas season in paradise. Why not share these moments for a chance to win $100 in cash? Log on to visitguam.com/Instagram today to participate in the Guam Visitors Bureau #Instagram photo and video contest. A winner will be chosen every week, so share your best holiday moments now and win. Brought to you by GVB, making Guam a better place to live, work, and visit.
Okay, so here we are heading down the last few minutes here before our big halftime show. So I've been talking about the Supreme Court holding that the 1,200 gaming machine licenses that were issued are void. So there's going to be a lot of interesting things happening now. What happens to the machines? Is it legal to hang on to the machines? Will somebody be selling the machines? Who will be buying the machines? What attempts will be made to lobby senators to introduce legislation to cure the mistake that the Supreme Court made when the Supreme Court took away our freedom to go to game rooms, took away our liberty? I think some of these machines are called liberty machines, as a matter of fact, yeah. So I'm going to editorialize a little bit here myself. These game rooms, are something we do not need. Absolutely do not need. I don't frequent game rooms. I don't think I've ever been in a game room, to the best of my recollection. I get some intel, though, about what goes on in game rooms from different sources. And I understand that in addition to gambling, it's a good place to go if you want to buy drugs. And why not? They're open all night long. There's always, having large amounts of cash in a game room, wouldn't draw any suspicions, etc. And it just seems like a very, I don't know exactly the right word. I'm going to use the word den here to describe these game rooms. Dens of iniquity is what I would say. Now, if anybody out there, any tailgater owns a game room, I think the chances of that happening are somewhere between slim and none. And I've offended you. Well, don't get too excited, because that's exactly what I mean to do. Because I don't think our society needs these game rooms any longer. And if the Supreme Court decision closes the game rooms, I'm going to say hooray. Yeah, and I hear, the smart money over here telling me, if we had legal gambling here, we had casino gambling, we could make so much money, better schools, better hospitals. Vegas, they got legal gambling. I don't want to hear any of it. Not that I'm closed-minded, but it just doesn't work out that way. If we ever needed a case in point, it would be the Northern Marianas, where the Chinese came in and built a casino in Saipan and bought several politicians in the process, and ran perhaps the world's largest money laundering scheme, where they ran more a larger handle through the temporary casino in what had been the old duty-free shop than any of the casinos in Macau would run through. So it was obviously completely corrupt. Nobody in the Northern Marianas did anything about it except perhaps try to get on the right side of the money. It's the last thing that we need, and the Supreme Court decision doing away with the gaming machines, to me, is cut from the same brand of cloth. It's a good thing to have over with. If it is over with, I don't think that the interests that are pro-gaming machine are going to give up that easily. But anything that's good for talk radio can't be all bad.
They might make it underground right next to the cockfighting pit.
That's true, yeah. Well, cockfighting is, of course, cultural. And that takes us up to, I'm going to skip ahead, since you mentioned it, to Pacell versus the Gazzaneros. Wayne Pacell has a couple of groups, and he's called on the governor to stop the upcoming day-to-day cockfighting derby. In the wake of the Animal Wellness Action obtaining a secret schedule of cockfighting derbies planned for the Dome in Day-to-day starting on New Year's Day, the organization's president, Wayne Pacell, called on Governor Leon Guerrero to speak out publicly and to call on organizers to cancel their plans for the illegal event. A source within the cockfighting community shared the schedule with AWA, and the animal welfare group released the schedule to the public late last week. The biggest outlays of cash are set for Saturdays, with each entrant in a 3-cock derby required to pay $600 into the pot, with smaller pots for fights on Wednesdays, Fridays, and Sundays. We ask you to speak out publicly against this criminal conspiracy, call on the organizers to scuttle their plans, and announce that law enforcement personnel will be present to maintain the peace and discourage any illegal acts of animal cruelty, said Wayne Pacell in a letter to the governor. All right, let's take a short break. We'll come back to the Day-to-Day cockpit right after the break.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Putting the White House to the test. I'm Carmen Roberts, Fox News. President Biden tries to rally the country to tackle the latest COVID wave, fueled by the deadly Delta variant and now the highly contagious Omicron strain.
The president said unvaccinated Americans have good reason to worry about the latest COVID variant, while the fully vaccinated,
You have much, much less reason to worry. You have a high degree of protection against severe illness.
Still, the administration is taking new steps with rising numbers of COVID cases, including a program to provide 500 million rapid in-home test kits to families and opening federal testing clinics around the country with the goal of keeping schools and businesses open. At the White House, Jared Halpern, Fox News.
The CDC announcing after midnight that 2021 appears on track to be the deadliest year in U.S. history, fueled in large part by the coronavirus. A rare case of détente between President Biden and former President Trump after President Biden thanked Mr. Trump and his administration for their success in making COVID vaccines available. Mr. Trump exclusively telling Fox News he's very appreciative and surprised, adding that tone and trust are critical in getting Americans vaccinated. California will require healthcare workers to get booster shots. Governor Newsom says he wants to make sure hospitals can stay prepared. But a judge says San Diego's school district cannot impose its own vaccine mandate.
The vaccine requirements are up to the state legislature, which he noted has requirements for 10 other vaccines in order to attend school. But he said a patchwork of school districts coming up with their own rules that might be even stricter than what the state comes up with isn't workable. Jessica Rosenthal, Fox News.
America's listening to Fox News.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
An easily overlooked part of covering our home is what's inside of it. Over time, we buy things we don't want to lose, but don't update our contents coverage. The smart thing to do is get the answers and level up our insurance to make sure we're totally protected.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tuman location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Former Trump administration National Security Advisor Michael Flynn sues the House committee investigating the Capitol riot to block the panel from getting his personal phone records. Jurors in the Kim Potter trial resumed deliberations Wednesday.
Late in the day, the jury posed two questions to the court. The second involved the jury handling Kim Potter's gun in the discussion room. It was the first question, as read by Judge Regina Chu, that raised eyebrows.
If the jury cannot reach consensus, what is the guidance?
Judge Chu urged them to keep talking to reach that consensus.
Fox's Gernal Scott. Potter is charged with manslaughter in the death of black driver Dante Wright. Potter claims she thought she was firing a taser, not a gun. In New York, the jury in the Ghislaine Maxwell sex trafficking trial asked to review some transcripts. And in California, jurors in the fraud trial of Theranos CEO Elizabeth Holmes asked the judge if they could take home the voluminous jury instructions. The judge told them, sorry, no. Just in time for the holiday meal planning, federal health officials are investigating some bagged salads.
The FDA and CDC say they're working with state and local officials after an outbreak of Listeria monocytogenes infections in 8 states, first reported more than 5 years ago. The source appears to be packaged salad from Illinois-based Fresh Express. The outbreak is linked to 10 illnesses, 10 hospitalizations, and 1 death from July of 2016 to October of this year. Rich Dennison, Fox News.
And the Critics' Choice Awards are still a go for next month, even as COVID concerns rise.
Meanwhile, the in-person Palm Springs International Film Festival and BAFTA LA's annual Tea Party have both been canceled.
Fox's Lauren Faulkner. And I'm Carmen Roberts, and this is Fox News.
Santa's coming and things are looking up. Bank Pacific has rolled out Rudolph's favorite My Christmas loan with an annual percentage interest rate as low as 3.99% and up to $50,000. And with the new Bank Pacific contactless Visa debit card, you can have the flexibility of using your money when you want to, where you want to. My Christmas Loan contactless Visa debit card. Let's make Christmas merrier this year. Equal opportunity lender. Credit conditions apply. Merry Christmas from Bank Pacific.
The holidays are here and you know what that means. Time to gather with family and friends, dress up our homes, and explore Christmas season in paradise. Why not share these moments for a chance to win $100 in cash? Log on to visit guam.com/Instagram today to participate in the Guam Visitors Bureau #Instagram photo and video contest. A winner will be chosen every week, so share your best holiday moments now and win. Brought to you by GVB, making Guam a better place to live, work, and visit.
Subway's Eat Fresh Refresh has done it again, serving up yet another new and improved sub, the Cali Fresh Steak, loaded with tender, flavorful marinated steak on top of thick-cut hickory smoked bacon, smashed avocado, and fresh mozzarella. The Cali Fresh Steak is protein-packed to leave you feeling full and satisfied. Cali Fresh Steak is made on our freshly baked hearty multigrain bread layered with fresh veggies of your choice. Subway, eat fresh.
Guam Auto Spot has the best selection in Buick, GMC, Mitsubishi, and used cars like the 2021 Mitsubishi Mirage starting at $127 per paycheck. Zero down. Call 671-478-AUTO to take a test drive or get pre-approved online at guamautospot.com.
So here we are, another beautiful halftime show here on Tall Tales, and I come back to the Gods and Arrows and Wayne Pacell. And this guy Wayne Pacell and his organization Animal Wellness Action has really taken an interest in cockfighting here on the island. He's made a pen pal out of the Director of Agriculture, Chelsea Munya, what's her last name? Breck? Something like that. Yeah. And he keeps coming up with all these statistics about how many chickens are imported into the island and what's going on in various states in the mainland, et cetera. And my analysis is this, that if there are people still cockfighting, engaged in cockfighting, and I suspect there are, that's what's going to go on New Year's and then in the next few days after that at the Dado Cockpit, this would be a really good time to quit before you get caught, because you're going to get caught sooner or later, and it's not going to be a whole lot of fun. So Pacell here is urging the governor to come out publicly and say, don't do this, guys. It's illegal. Now, we're having a lot of inroads on gambling here, cockfighting, gambling machines, Liberty machines, etc. But I'm going to make a bet. I'm going to make a bet that the governor won't even acknowledge Wayne Pacell's communications. She won't even say, thanks for your letter, Wayne, but, or thanks for your letter, Wayne, or et cetera, because she is too wrapped up with this. It's part of the culture, and she knows that politically she'll take a lot of knocks if she comes out anti-cockfight. Not because the island, as the population of the island, majority of the population of the island is really, really enamored with cockfights, because it's just not that way.
Just the one that matters to her.
Yeah. But there is a small, compact group of people who do favor cockfighting, and they'll probably go out of their way to make it life miserable for the governor if she doesn't go along with the party line as made known to us by the likes of Jose Pito Terlahi, etc., and all of those who don't know a cockfight from Adams off Ox, who say, well, it's part of the culture. And I think it was Senator Shelton that added a provision in one of the budgets that said enforcing the anti-cockfighting law will be the last priority of Guam enforcement, which really sends a strong message to the cockers, hey, Shelton's on our side. She's good. Let's vote for it. Let's support her. But it's a meaningless gesture because it's a federal law. It's not a local law. And if Governor Guerrero called up Steve and said, Steve, I want you to go out and arrest all of those people at that cockfight on January 1st, he couldn't do it. Well, he could, but he would be in a heap of trouble if he did, because it's not a local law. It's a federal law.
I wonder if there's a mandate on masks at cockfights and game rooms.
I would hope not.
There's a lot of gasping for air.
That's true. That's very true. Yeah, and now with the game room, the Supreme Court decision on the game room, grasping for pearls too, right?
Yeah, she didn't comment on the Liberty machines either, has she?
No, she hasn't. Yeah, she knows politically that's a minefield. But I think she's very dependable on the whole cockfighting initiative. Okay, so I skipped ahead on the card to pick that up because Jose mentioned it. So next on the card is wealth redistribution versus us. And this goes back again to compensation considered for heirs of World War II survivors. Now, we get really mixed up in vocabulary here. We use the word survivors to mean more than one thing. And I'm going to define some terms. When we talk about, when we use the word survivor, we're not talking about someone who is related to someone who died during the war. That would be an heir. A survivor would be someone who was born before before July 21, 1944, and is still alive today. That would be a survivor. Okay, now there are people who died during the Japanese occupation. Obviously, people who died during the Japanese occupation are not survivors. Their kinfolk, their descendants are not survivors. When we use the word survivor to describe them, we get mixed up really quick. They would be heirs or putative heirs, P-U-T-A-T-I-V-E, a good lawyer's word that means could be heirs if certain conditions were met. So the senators will hold another hearing next week on a bill that would use $10 million from the general fund to compensate war claim survivors who missed a federal claims deadline. Now, what that's about is this. Madeline was able to get a law through the U.S. Congress, a federal law, that would allow us to pay $10, $12, or $15,000 to people who were alive during the Japanese occupation and are still alive that underwent certain kinds of bad experiences. If they were alive on the day that Madeline's bill became law, they're covered. If they died afterward, their heirs would take. But if they died before the effective date of Madeline's law, nothing comes out of it. So the application period was open for 1 year. You had to fill out some papers. You had to send them to Washington. And it was a pretty efficient system the way it worked out. But if you miss the deadline, you are, as we say in the legal profession, SOL. You don't get any money at all.
Is that Latin?
I'm going to have it translated into Latin, yeah. So if you miss the deadline for filing, you're SOL. So local politicians, as usual, well, it's just not fair. They didn't file for no fault of their own. They just forgot. So we got to open it. We got to get everybody involved here. So we'll let those 700 people file, and we'll pay them out of local money. No, it's not.
Does anybody not get that? That's just ridiculous.
It is. However, it isn't a whole lot different from the statute that Madeline was able to get enacted into law, because Madeline's statute allowed or required that the amounts payable would be paid out of Section 30 money, which in a sense is we're using our own money to pay ourselves. So that's what would happen with the 700. Now everybody is aware of the legislative kerfuffle where Speaker Terlahi moved a floor amendment that said we got to pay not only those folks, but we have to pay heirs of people who died during the Japanese occupation. That amendment was ruled non-germane and did not make it to the floor for discussion. It should have been tossed in a shucks can. But somehow it made it into the engrossed bill. I don't understand how that is with all those eagle-eyed senators down there. Well, except for one, Senator Paris, who's so dense that she can't decide if she wants to vote for a bill until the roll call vote starts. And then she passes 3 times, and then she finally decides. So I could understand how she'd miss it being as dense as that, right? But the other 14 didn't see that. And Legislative Council, whose job it is to make sure that a bill that is engrossed is properly engrossed and ready for transmission to the governor, apparently didn't see it easier. But it worked out okay because they found a scapegoat down at the legislature, someone named Renee Mano, who is what used to be called the recording secretary, who's supposed to work with council to engross the bills. But the governor signed the bill anyhow. And nobody at the governor's office picked up on it. Then when they finally noticed their mistake, we got to fix this. How are we going to do that? So another bill was introduced to tell the governor, to repeal the bad law, the mistake, and then give the governor 30 days to figure out how to pay the 700. And the governor was supposed to come up with this plan and send it to the legislature within 30 days. Well, what the governor did, she came up with that, but she came up with more. She came up with a plan to pay the heirs, some of the heirs of those who died during the Japanese occupation. And that's what the legislature has before it right now. The measure also aims to pay descendants of those who died before the federal bill was enacted. Now, this is not clear. Does that mean everybody who was alive on July 21, 1944, lived after that but died before Madeline's bill? That's a huge pile of people. Bill 230, proposed by the governor, would prioritize payments to those who survived the war and would have received compensation for injury, forced march, or internment under the 2016 Guam World War II Loyalty Recognition Act, but missed the filing deadline. Edward Byrd, director of the Department of Administration, said it's unknown how many people fall into that category. So I wonder if Edward Byrd had a different job in the government of Guam, and they slid him in to be the director of administration in place of Edward Byrne. That's what the paper says, Edward Byrd. So maybe they just slipped him in to grease the wheels for Crescenda Uggan. Yeah, if they did, that's certainly for the birds. But that's what it says. It says Edward Byrd. Yeah, once those claims are paid, the program would be open to the heirs of those who have died, while payments to the World War II survivors, there you go, the word survivors, right, range from $10,000 to $15,000. The heirs would receive $25,000. If the heir is a surviving spouse of someone who lived through the war and there are no children, the spouse would receive the entire amount. Otherwise, the spouse would receive half, the other half divided among the children. If the spouse is dead, the money would be divided among the children. Now, this leaves to me the question, what happens if the spouse and children are all dead? Do the grandchildren take by intestate succession, the rules of intestate succession? I suspect there will be claims, there will be letters of administration, estates opened, attempting to claim that money, unless, and I've read the statute, it doesn't lock that door at all.
Is there a double-dipping clause, for instance, a person who passed away in war who had children that were there during the war?
No.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do, yeah. So let's say that X is 90 years old during the Japanese occupation, and he dies on July 20, 1944. And X has 17 children, right? And all of them live up until today. Yeah, it's a very and
so they would get the 90-year-olds.
Yeah, and they already got their own.
They got their own.
Yeah, because they were all alive during the Japanese occupation.
Let's just throw the money in the air.
Yeah, really, yeah. There's no sense having any system here. The heir is a surviving spouse of someone who lived through the war, and there are no children. If the heir is a surviving spouse of someone who lived through the war. So this article makes it seem like you lived through the war and died after that, but before the Loyalty Recognition Act passed, you're covered. That's a lot of people. And then of course we have only Senator Brown speaks out about it. Brown said while she supported the idea of paying World War II survivors, she was concerned about using money from the general fund rather than the federal government. This was an injustice brought upon our people. So to ask our people to be the ones paying this compensation is not morally right. It's not ethically right. This idea that we are having essentially the descendants of victims of World War II pay compensation to themselves, to me it's bothersome. Brown also said $10 million won't be enough to cover the claims of the descendants of World War II victims. Senators had numerous questions about details of the bill. Joe St. Augustine said another hearing would be held on December 30. At the beginning of Tuesday's hearing, Byrne, now apparently Byrd
got his job back.
Yeah, got his job back, or Byrd was on leave or something like that. Byrne described the war claims as a very touchy subject. This is the first time I can remember where a nation that was oppressed was forced to pay out their own war claims on behalf of their own war claimants, rather than the aggressive party that caused the reason for war claims to arise in the first place. Well, you're just not looking very hard, Bird. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I object to it, again, for the same reason I objected to it last time. And that is that if you really stop and ask what's going on, it's a income distribution or wealth distribution statute. Because it takes away money from somebody like you and I, Jose, and gives it to someone else who can trace his ancestry back to someone who was alive and died before July 21, 1944. I don't care how meritorious the claim is, that's what it really is. And anytime the government uses its taxation powers in a manner like this, like you said, why don't we just throw the money out on the street and let people fight over it? Yeah. It's not good government. And remember, I'm the guy...
But how do we run a re-election on that, Bob?
Exactly. And I'm the one that wants to see an effective, efficient government operating within the rule of law, providing the basic government services on at least a break-even basis. That's all the government should do. None of this fairness, making everything right, taking money from some people and giving it to other people because the other people have a better sob story than the ones who lost the money. And that's basically what we're doing here after, let's see, 76 years since liberation? Yeah. Okay, next on the card I have, I'm going to go to Jerry Kitchen versus the Guam Retirement Fund. The driver of a Jeep that crashed into Jerry Kitchen in Tamuning has reached a deal with local prosecutors. Defendant Nikita Uggan. I wonder if she's related to Crescenda. Everybody else is. Why should she be different? Defendant Nikita Uggan appeared before the Superior Court Judge Alberto Tolentino Tuesday. Uggan is currently reviewing the plea agreement. She's scheduled to appear back in court on January 14. On February 25, Guam police responded to an auto off-roadway crash after a red Jeep crashed into Jerry Kitchen, one of the businesses in the Camacho Landmark 2 building at the ITC intersection in Tamuning. The vehicle shattered the front of the restaurant, which sits on a raised curb within a parking lot and is some distance from the roadway. 3 other passengers were inside the vehicle, to include an off-duty police officer. Uggan was charged with driving while impaired as a misdemeanor. GPD also conducted an internal affairs investigation into the crash, but authorities have not released details of the investigation. There you go. Yeah. So, and then the other day, a red sedan crashed into the front of the retirement fund building. And going back to this first story here, Uggan said she has not determined whether or not she will enter a plea on the crash at the retirement fund building. Yeah. I'm beginning to see a pattern here. And of course, there may be a terrible mistake of fact here. It may very well be that Uggan thought that they were serving Chinese food at the retirement fund. They actually printed the name of the person who crashed into the retirement fund in another story. I'm just having this whole Jerry Kitchen thing has been so much fun. And
from the get-go.
From the get-go, yeah. And this is where Chief of Police Steve Ignacio really made his bones as far as the press was concerned, because it had all of the earmarks of a cover-up until the Attorney General got in and actually did something with it. And when Steve was asked, it was suggested to Steve, isn't there a cover-up here? He said, I know that there was no cover-up. I know that from the get-go there was no cover-up. From the very beginning, he knew that. Okay, let's head for Chicago in the 7th inning stretch.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Afre, my name is Kiona Rivera, student at the University of Guam and recent recipient of the G is for Giving Scholarship. This holiday season, I'm encouraging our island community to support the G is for Giving campaign. Your generous contribution not only support programs at the university, but also helps students like me reach our academic goals. For more information on how you can help shape the future leaders of our island, call the UOG Endowment Foundation at 671-735-2957 or visit their website at give.uog.edu.
Portions of the program brought to you by Nissan. Choose your favorite Nissan, and there's an abundance of Nissan automobiles to choose from. Rogues, Rogue Sports, Muranos, Kicks, Sentras, Leafs, Rogues, and then start talking about the deal they want to put together for you. Enjoy 0% APR, or your first 3 payments are on them. Just sign and drive away. Inventory limited, so don't wait. See Nissan Guam first. Wait, there's the fine print. I got to read the thing in fine print ease. On approved credit, 3 payments calculated, 5% APR, 60 months term, and based on the actual selling price of the vehicle only, not including down payment or any aftermarket products or accessories. See Nissan Guam for full details.
So here we are, Wrigley Field in Chicago, 7th inning stretch. That means we've got just 2 more innings to go for Tall Tales today when I have to sit in front of the microphone and say, let's go, Brandon. And I'll do that. Okay, next on the card is Bavacqua versus the United States Marine Corps. And this is an article that ran in the Daily News. Descendants of former Marine Corps base landowners sought. The Guam Museum is seeking more information about the families who lived around Magua, the site of construction for Marine Corps base Camp Bloss during World War II. That sentence doesn't read very well, does it? The Guam Museum is seeking more information about families who lived around Magua, the site of construction for Marine Corps Camp Bloss, Base Camp Bloss during World War II. So was Camp Bloss built during World War II? Kind of sounds
Apparently,
like it.
according to that sentence, yes.
Yeah, kind of was, yeah. I think what the sentence is trying to say is the Guam Museum is seeking more information about families who lived around Magua during World War II. Magua is the site of current site of Marine Corps Base Camp Bloss. Sometimes 2 sentences are better than 1. Census documents from 1940 identified by local historian Dave Lotz. Who better to work with real estate than someone named Lotz? Local historian Dave Lotz showed that at least 26 people lived in the area. Documents from the U.S. Navy's land condemnations in 1950 provide a list of landowners which include members of the Ada, Cruz, Manabusan, Iglesias, and Titingphone families. Isn't Manabusan a Japanese name? No? Because it ends in san. You know, like you run into you run into Itazuka. Oh, Itazuka song, right? So I would expect the same thing from someone named Manibu. Oh, Manibu-san. Maybe I'm wrong. Anyhow, Magua was an ancient settlement area, the subject of controversy in 2018 when the U.S. military opted not to halt construction after the discovery of several historic sites. You kind of see where this is going, can't you? The military has said the area was not a permanent ancient settlement, though local officials and historians, I wonder if that would be Ann Paris Hattori, have disputed that as more human remains and artifacts have been unearthed over the course of the last 3 years. Lieutenant Commander Catherine Koenig, Public Affairs Officer for Joint Region Marianas, told the PDN that a map of the area identified by lots may depict Magua, but possibly other areas such as Sabanan Fadang and Tagwak. The site had also been cleared post-1940 because of agricultural and other military activities. Lots contends that the other possible sites depicted could be co-located with Magua, and that past clearing was not as significant as Camp Blas' current construction. Lots was one of the few people museum curator Michael Lujan Bavacqua reached out to earlier this year after increased public interest around the Magua area. The museum is looking to gather as much information about the site prior to its clearing. So Bavacqua now, as you know, is no longer working for Senator Kelly Marsh Titano. He is now the general manager of the Guam Museum. So the museum is right in the middle of this.
Of course.
Lots was one of the people museum curator Michael Lujan Bavacqua reached out to earlier this year after increased public interest in the Magua area. The museum is looking to gather as much information as possible about the site prior to its clearing. Quote, we want to understand that area so that when people ask, when people talk about these issues, we can provide as much information as possible. So if somebody says, well, nobody lives there, well, we can say to them, well, pretty deep subject here, all these wells. Well, no, actually, and chances are good, a lot of them might still be living there, Bavacqua said. It was established that Magua was a more permanent, was established that Magua was a more permanent site, it would also change the way the area was handled under historic preservation laws, Bavacqua said. Some artifacts and habitations found in the area were related to World War II, Koenig said. The archaeological sites were treated as significant sites, she said, and subject to investigations to preserve and collect cultural or historical information. Much of the public focus on human remains found during base construction has been around pre-Spanish Lati era discoveries, but it shouldn't be assumed that those are the only remains in the area, Lots said. He made lots of comments here, hasn't he? At least one person had contacted Bavacqua after they found their great-grandmother listed on the 1940 census. Another reached out to Lots after seeing one of their family members' name on documents and believed that they may have been buried there. According to Koenig, one set of remains was found next to Japanese World War II era equipment and was undergoing laboratory analysis with the Japanese consulate. Much of the remains, however, were fragmentary and difficult to analyze. These remains with unknown ethnicity and time period will continue to be treated, treated with dignity and respect. Yeah. How do you treat something with dignity? You can treat it with respect.
Yeah, give dignity. Now, I would assume that if there was indeed a pre-World War II burial site there as far as a graveyard, that it would have been documented already.
One would think so.
Especially Spanish documents.
Yeah, well, trying to make sense of this, so there were people living there in 1940, and Bavacqua and Lotz think that the bodies of those people might still be on that property, which means that they would have had to have died and been buried there, or died and weren't buried there. Bavacqua said it was responsible to think that some of the residents in Magua during the war would have buried their dead at the site. This guy is just a fountain of information, isn't he? Said it was reasonable to think that some of the residents in Magua during the war would have buried their dead at that site. During the war, it was common to kind of bury people at the ranch. Kind of bury people at the ranch. Let's not dig a very deep hole, I guess. Just because, because normal life had shut down in terms of the Catholic Church, in terms of so many things, he said, they could identify World War II burials there. I think the community would take it very seriously because they buried somebody there, and if the family could identify it and tell the story, we all have stories in our own family about the sort of tragedy of the war. I'm going to tell mine one more time, okay? A gentleman named Paul Klitzkie, born in 1913 in Milton, Wisconsin, was a farmer, had a few make-work jobs, joined the National Guard in Janesville, Wisconsin, which is Rock County, Wisconsin. At that time, Janesville had a tank battalion, National Guard, that was a unit that was a tank battalion. In September 1940, the President Roosevelt nationalized the National Guard, called them all into federal service, 1940, September. So Paul went to Fort Knox for further training. His unit was integrated into another unit. It lost its colors. It was no longer the Janesville Tank Battalion. And in November of 1941, they were dispatched to the Philippines. They landed in Manila on the day before Thanksgiving, 1941. To shorten the story a little bit, Paul died in Camp O'Donnell of dysentery, and I think it was August of 1942. But the troop ship that took Paul to Manila stopped in Honolulu and Guam. So I'm not the first Klitzkie to ever step foot on Guam, right? What a tragedy, just your everyman, just a plain old guy, right? Dies in a prison camp in the Philippines in World War II. Nothing to do with the story I'm reading. I just think it's really interesting. Bavacqua and Lotz were unaware of the landowners prior to Lotz's discovery, but unsure whether information about World War II landowners was available to the military or Guam State Historic Preservation Office, also known as the SHPO. The condemnation documents that identify the former landowners are available upon request at the district court. The PDN asked Koenig whether the Navy was aware of the possible landowners before starting base construction. She deferred the question, and landowners, they're not landowners, former landowners.
What was the word called?
Pre-condemnation. Yeah. She deferred the question to the SHPO, but said the Navy would have done research to fulfill the 2011 programmatic agreement. Public notice was also required prior to the signing of the 2010 and 2015 environmental analyses. In effect, all decedents of the former landowners have received notice along with the public at large. It's likely that some descendants would have also participated directly in public meeting discussions, ethnographic study, interviews, and other forms of outreach as part of the environmental planning activities. The only property owner up there that they talked to was not a Magua property owner, Lott said of the ethnographic study. It was immediately to the south. It was two members of the Artero family. Despite previous understandings of the area, Artero family members were not the only landowners in the NCS area. State Historic SHPO Patrick Lujan was also appointed to replace former SHPO Linda Uggan, said his involvement with the matter as construction proceeded in 2018 was limited. He was unsure whether any families of the former landowners had been contacted prior to construction or whether that was the mission of the office. Well, he's the SHPO, for crying out loud. On Friday, Lujan said he would have to review past records. Everything that should have been conducted, including contacting original landowners, should have been in the environmental impact survey conducted by the military. He was unsure what the SHPO could do moving forward, but encouraged anyone with family ties to the area to reach out to his office for assistance. My door is open. They can come anytime, unless they're reporters. Okay, let's head for Churchill Downs. And when I come out of Churchill Downs, I'll be looking for R. Carl, who wants to talk about a Camp Bloss question.
As we celebrate this holiday season, we reflect on the hardships of the past 2 years and remain grateful for the family and friends who share our journey and lighten our burdens. The team at Security Title is proud of the work we do to support ourselves and our families, to serve and care for our customers, and to give back to our community. May this season of joy and the new year bring happiness, good health, and prosperity to you and yours. Merry Christmas from all of us at Security Title.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
So here we go. We're at Churchill Downs now, the home stretch for Tall Tales. That means 3 or 4 furlongs more, and my race is done for the day. I've got R. Carl, the most dangerous man in the room, on the line, but I do want to remind you that this is on the card as Bavacqua versus USMC. Now, I've given you the background, but I haven't brought it back to Bavacqua, which I will do if R. Carl doesn't. I will do it myself, because that's the reason that it's on the card, because of Bavacqua's presence in the mix. Good afternoon, R. Carl.
Hey, good afternoon, Bob. You know, I'm really surprised at how the amazing prophetic powers my ancestors had, you know, so centuries ago, that they were able to position their sacred sites on the future sites of military bases.
Yeah, there must have been some sort of a pagan ritual that allowed them to locate these sites that would, you know, hundreds of years later would become military bases.
Exactly. And I remember reading something about some artifacts being uncovered when they were building the new Tsubaki Towers. And I don't recall any protests or demands that they shut down the project and just bring everything to a grinding halt. And Tumon itself, wasn't Tumon at one point a major village on Guam?
Yeah.
Tumon, I think it was called, or something like that. I mean,
Well,
it was,
people spell it Tomhom. I think it's properly pronounced like this, Tumon.
oh.
Tumon.
You know, and I just wonder how many of these village settlements were scattered around various places on Guam that were just bulldozed and nobody cared, you know.
Uh-huh.
And it's just strange, the selective outrage. And you just see the real purpose of it is just to this anti-U.S. military. It really, you know, the issue is never the issue. You know, it's always something to do with framing the America and the U.S. military and, you know, related factors in a certain light.
Well, it's all critical race theory, Carl. You know, that bad things happened, bad things happened 100 years ago because America is a systemic racist country, and they keep happening, and they're going to keep happening for that same reason. And here's another example of what they did up at Magua. And of course, I'll tie this in a little tighter, but that's why Bavacqua and his museum are involved here. Why would a museum have any interest in this at all, except for the reason that we're talking about, right?
Yeah, if this wasn't on a U.S. military base, we wouldn't hear two peeps about it. It would have dug up artifacts and bones, I'm sure, and had them, put at the museum and categorized and stuff like that. But it wouldn't have been all this, protest and everything. There wouldn't have been two words said about it.
First, we have to find out what mistakes the military authorities made in the process, in the beginning. That's very important. We got to find these mistakes, and then we have to ascribe evil motives to the mistakes. They couldn't have been just mistakes. They had to be deliberate mistakes. And then we have to expand that into today's lesson, that this is just another example of what the Navy and the Marine Corps and the U.S. are doing to our beloved island with their machine gun ranges and their camp lots and their destruction of sacred land like Magua.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like that. One of my favorite quotes told to former longtime Marxist David Horowitz, a member of the Radical Students for a Democratic Society, the SDS, told him that the issue is never the issue. The issue is always the revolution.
Exactly.
And the revolution is the destruction of capitalism around the world, and that includes capitalism on Guam.
Mm-hmm.
It is to end capitalism here and replace it with another form of government, a socialist communist government. And it's being done incrementally, but I mean, the more you read and observe and think about it, it's just so clear. I mean, it's crystal clear what is happening here. Anyway, Bob, I just wanted to tongue-in-cheek call in and mention that, the selective outrage is just really interesting, fascinating to watch.
True enough, Carl.
All right. Talk to you guys later.
So long. Yeah, the selective outrage. So, when I saw this in the paper, I murmured to myself, no good will come from this. First of all, how was it that the Guam Museum and its curator was assigned to this? Did the governor's chief of staff, John Jr. Calvo, say, I'm going to talk to Dave Lotz. He's got a bone to pick, and he talks to Dave Lotz, and he says, John Jr. Calvo.
I call him as I hear him.
There you go. And John Jr. Calvo says, well, I don't know what I should do with this. I guess I'll talk to Crescenda Uggan, right? And perhaps other people. when Watts, of course, goes around talking, he's going to talk to Bavacqua first. And Bavacqua says, I got an idea, Dave. I'm going to ask the governor to put the museum in charge of this. Because, you know, museums deal with old things and et cetera. So if I'm in charge of this, then I'll be able to get a lot of really good earned media criticizing the Marines, the Navy, the government, on and on and on. And so he approaches the governor with that. The governor says, oh, yeah. Approaches her with something like, you know, at the Guam Museum, we're so interested in the culture that whenever there's any excavation where there might be some cultural artifacts, I think the Guam Museum should have the front row seat at that. The governor said, yeah, it's about the culture. Go ahead, Michael. Send me in an order and I'll sign it for you.
Thus negating the reason for the existence of SHPO.
Exactly. Yeah, we don't need no SHPO. We don't need no stinking SHPO.
Here's my museum.
Here's my SHPO. It's called a museum. So, yeah, my suspicious mind tells me there was some manipulation that Bavacqua wanted to get in here so that he'll have one more soapbox to stand on to criticize the military, the Marine Corps, and everything. Once again, trying to convince the people of Guam that the United States is bad and that the only salvation for the island of Guam, specifically Chamorros, is to break with the United States and become an independent, sovereign country, free of its colonial master, the United States government. I can't see any other reason to for any kind of a museum dimension here at all.
The crossover is just, again, there's no curiosity in any of these print media people.
Exactly. Oh, yeah. No one thought to say, what does this have to do with the museum? It just, it's like my story about the moon, yeah, well, we're going to send colonists to the moon because, the moon is made out of green cheese. And the moon is made out of green cheese. They sit there and type it up. And
he said it.
Yeah. And once again, the classic example of that is PNC News when they weren't running a press release. PNC News, I'll tell this story again because it's such a failure of that media outlet, and they're not alone in the process. Senator Nelson comes out and does a little media interview saying that this programmatic agreement has to be signed by the governor or it's invalid. I have a 1982 Guam Superior Court case that holds that. So I read that, et cetera, and then I send a note to Senator Chelina Nelson's office. Please send me the decision. And I get a very polite response. We got your email, et cetera. Nothing. So I send a sunshine law request. And the response to the sunshine law request is, we don't have that public record. Well, if you don't have the public record, what were you talking about? So I send another sunshine law request that says, send all public records that show that you didn't just make this up to get some earned media. What does she send back? What's her response?
The Organic Act.
A digital rendition of the Organic Act. So I call Wayne Chargaloff over at PNC and I said, this is your story. This is what happened. Oh, and then, by the way, her hook was she was going to ask the Attorney General for an opinion on the signing of the programmatic agreement. That's the reason.
The Attorney General from the 1980s?
Yeah. So, well, I don't have time to finish this, but the Attorney General wrote back and said, you got nothing there. That's not the law, et cetera. But PNC just took exactly what she said. They wouldn't do a story on it. They just let it go. Well, that's what the senator said. I'll finish this story some other time. Okay, it's that time of the day when I have to say, let's go, Brandon. And we'll see you tomorrow.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Be concerned, not worried. I'm Carmen Roberts, Fox News.
Starting next month, private insurance will also cover at-home testing.
That's one of the new measures President Biden rolls out to help slow the surge in COVID cases. The administration plans to distribute 500 million free at-home testing kits, as well as deploy military doctors and nurses to help hospitals struggling with a slew of COVID cases. Speaking from the White House Tuesday, the president said Americans should take the now dominant Omicron variant seriously, but not panic.
If you're not fully vaccinated, you have good reason to be concerned. You're at a high risk of getting sick. And if you get sick, you're likely to spread it to others, including friends and family.
The CDC announcing this morning that 2021 is set to become the deadliest year in U.S. history, fueled by the coronavirus. As the agency continues collecting data, it seems this year will top last year's record by at least 15,000 deaths. COVID is the third leading cause of death in the U.S., behind heart disease and cancer. President Biden still hopes to strike a Build Back Better deal with Democratic Senator Joe Manchin, days after the senator first told Fox News he cannot support the plan. This as progressives like Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez put pressure on the president.
Tweeting, Biden needs to lean on his executive authority now. He's been delaying and underutilizing it so far, referencing climate and student debt as options.
Fox's Aisha Hasni. 25 years after 6-year-old John Benet Ramsey was found murdered in her family's Colorado home, police say they're looking at genetic DNA testing to see if it can help solve the case. America's listening to Fox News.